Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am delighted to welcome my guest today, Jon DeWaal. Jon is the Executive Director, Life Transition Guide, and Learning Facilitator at Liminal Space, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping others find the courage and means to navigate major life transition. He spends his days guiding one-to-one transition sessions, leading transition groups, and facilitating learning workshops that teach transition skills at the PIER Learning Center at Liminal Space. PIER being P-I-E-R, provoke, invite, explore, restore. Jon is the host of a weekly podcast called Life Through Transitions, where each episode aims to help listeners navigate life's biggest changes. And I will say that I was privileged to be a guest on that podcast. Jon came to Seattle in 2003 to attend the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology, receiving his Master's of Divinity in 2007. Since then, he taught at the Seattle School as an adjunct professor on calling and career. Jon served as a fellow at the Allender Center for Trauma and Abuse. Over the last 10 years, his work and research at Liminal Space has shown that major transitions are places where people can find their desired path and become stronger, or where they can get stuck, sometimes for years. Having a plan, helpful guidance, and a clear focus can make all the difference in the world. Welcome, Jon.
Good to be here, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm just so glad that we were introduced. I believe it was our mutual friend, Marie Incontrera, who introduced us. And so thank you, Marie.
Yeah, love Marie.
Yeah, because clearly this podcast and your work are very closely aligned. And while I want to learn a lot more about your work, I also want to learn also about your own transitions and your own background. Can you tell us a little bit about the path or the journey that you've been on professionally and what led you to where you are now?
Yeah, you bet. Well, first, a little bit about where things are at today. I live in Edmonds, Washington. I'm married to my wife, Annie, and I've got 3 boys, 11, 8, and 4, turns 5 tomorrow.
Oh boy, happy birthday.
Yeah. So we're a young family, and we're also a family that's just in the midst of a lot of different adventures and activities and busyness and a lot of different changes. We're actually moving into our first home that we just bought, which is super exciting.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a journey to get to that point. And that's kind of part of the story. It was, as far as bigger transitions in my life that I've been through, I moved out here to Seattle to go to the graduate school that I went to get my master's. And after graduating, I thought I would follow, I thought approaching graduation, I would follow a more traditional path that most students did with an MDiv, which was either start a church or go work for one. And as I reached the finish line, I just recognized that was not the story I felt like I wanted to step further into, and yet had no idea what really was going to be the story. I had a sense of desire to work with people and to walk with them, but didn't know exactly the vision for what that could be. So I began my own season of not knowing, waiting and not knowing, and it extended for about 4 years. And during that time, I started a contracting business. Needed to make ends meet. I had our first child on the way. Annie was pregnant. We both got our masters at the same school. So we just had tons of school debt, a mortgage. This was back in 2007. So things were, yeah. So it was a very topsy-turvy time financially.
For you
And
and everyone else.
exactly. Yeah. And yet things were also good at the same time with a new baby on the way. So there's a lot of things that we were excited about, but also stressed by. And I think I became very myopic in my focus in terms of the one question I did ask, which was I got to pay my bills. And that's, of course, an important question. But I think I
Right.
set aside these bigger questions tied to meaning and purpose. And it began to eat at me over the years as the years rolled on. So fast forward about 4 years from that point, this was 2010. It was nearing the end of the summer, and I was working with my crew on the last job in September that we were going to do an exterior job. And I was on the roof painting away, and it had rained the night before. And it was one of those roofs that had the cedar shingles on the roof. And they were really old and slippery and mossy. And I slipped and fell off the roof and landed onto concrete. And shattered my ankle. And it was almost a 2.5 week process of surgeries. I had 3 surgeries to put it all back together. And then there was about a 4 or 5 month road to recovery to be able to walk on it. So it was not a normal break. It was kind of a game changer. And it really sent me into a season, a very intense season, not only just me, but my wife and kids, into a season of just everything being up in the air. Financially, vocationally, certainly within our family, because we had a 4.5-month-old and a 2.5-year-old at the time. So things were intense, to say the least. And so it was during that time of disruption where some people came alongside me, a few friends in particular, that helped me ask some bigger questions related to my future and the work that I would be doing. Because I knew it wasn't going to be, I didn't want it to be contracting. It was never the dream.
Right.
And it was during that time of questioning and really putting before me the bigger question of what do I really want?
So can I interrupt for a second? I'm just curious. So, and I can find your story relatable in that I too had a serious ankle injury many moons ago and was really out of commission for a while with it similarly, although I will admit I didn't have, it was a glamorous accident as yours was. Not as tragic as yours was, but it was definitely glamorous. But anyway, the point being that you still had, were you able to still continue with the contracting business? Could you have your crews go out and do the work? It was painting, right? It was a painting business.
Interior and exterior, residential, commercial. And I had a crew of, at the time, 7 or 8 guys, I think it was, project manager.
It was what we would, let's say, term as being a successful business, right?
Yeah, by all means, it was very succlead.
And so I'm not trying to underplay how difficult this time was at all. I'm just, wondering, were you able to lead? So then you said there were people walking alongside you, asking you questions about what might be next. And I'm curious who those people were. And I also just want to remark on how you frame these periods of time in your life as seasons. And I will ask you at some point throughout, whenever you want in this conversation, to share with us why you call them seasons, because I find that intriguing. And I think it's a nice framework for people to be thinking about their lives and how things transition. So I didn't mean to, well, I guess I did kind of mean to interrupt, I should say, but I wanted to, I think it's important for people to hear about, when you're self-employed, we know when you're self-employed, you don't work, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
You were the boss, you were the business owner, you did have a crew working for you. So I'm sure it was still very financially challenging to all of a sudden you not being able to go out and do the work or be a part of it, or to even bring in more work, whatever that was. I know how unsettling it can be to be literally disabled for a period of time. You've got 2 very young children. And then on top of it, you're also at a point where you are really rethinking, what am I doing? This kind of really brought it to a head. So I'm curious, why were people asking you? Who was walking alongside you and saying, what's next? I mean, wouldn't they just have assumed that you would just get better and start climbing back on roofs again?
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly an option. I think, practically speaking, that could have been easily a path I took. There was work booked. I had a great production manager who was able to, Justin was his name, he was able to keep the crew running and really took over the business for the most part, especially those first 2 weeks. So he kept things going. I managed from the bed. So I had really good help, which just the continued emphasis of good people and community around a person, certainly my story and others as I've walked alongside that we need as we move through these challenging times. And for me, so that was on the business side of things, but really the turmoil of what was going on on the inside that I needed help making sense of, understanding.
Yeah.
As the 4 years of running this business kind of wore on, I think my heart just grew really weary, but also toxic with resentments and frustrations and bitterness and also some shame. I was a contractor. I was painting houses. This is not what you do with a master's.
I see what you're saying.
This was not the vision for what I thought my life was going to be.
Right.
When I took that leap of faith to move out to Seattle.
Yeah, it was kind of a means to an end. That's how you started it, right? And there you were 4 years later, and now you have this major injury, and it's like, oh no, not this now, right?
Right. And so many stories start that way. I started something, and before long, 4 or 5 years have rolled by, or sometimes a decade or two, and you're like, what is going on? How did I get here?
Yeah.
But I think it's that question of like, how do I go forward from here? Like, now what?
Right.
That was the question I think I was most profoundly hit with and had help answering.
Mm-hmm.
One in particular, a good friend of mine, Ron, who's really good at, I just happened to be surrounded by one of the foremost experts in change management and how to move an individual from a coaching standpoint through difficult change and disruption. And so to have him in my corner, both his mind, but also his heart for me was a profound gift. I could not imagine me being where I'm at today without a friend like him who was able to hold really the whole story, both in terms of what was going on at that moment, but also what he saw in the potential of my life and where that could lead me, which I couldn't see at the time, right?
Right.
Most of us have a really difficult time seeing a future when we're in the midst of the fog of disruption and things that just hold a lot of loss and change.
Right.
So I had a good friend who not only let me like vent and cry and get angry and all of the feels that come with that kind of experience, but to also be curious.
Yes.
What would you want to do if you were to choose something else? What would that look like? And to not force his ideas of what that would look like upon me, but to really be curious with me about what that looked like. And that was such a gift, a gift. Know that there was time that I needed just to simply heal physically, but also time to really let curiosity begin to poke away at the ground and wonder about what seeds are there that could be germinating and more life come from. And, to your question about seasons.
Yeah.
This was a season of profound disruption.
Yes.
And I knew even before it, intellectually that experiences happen and there isn't necessarily a definitive start date and a stop date,
right?
But you are able to look back at a chapter or a season in your life and recognize that, okay, that chapter or that season is over. But when you're in the midst of it, it's certainly difficult to see. It's certainly difficult to see where those bookends are. But, it is such a natural phenomenon in life. I mean, you got the seasons of the year, and we as a species are the only ones that actually fight that. We are the only ones that actually fight the fact that we go from one season to the next. There's loss, there's change, there's new beginnings, there's growth, there's waiting and not knowing, and then there's something new that appears, and you just keep moving through season after season of change and transition. And most of us don't know how to do that.
That's for sure. Yeah. Well, that's partly why you're doing what you're doing now, I assume.
Yeah.
And certainly why we're sitting here talking on this podcast right now. Mostly because we haven't been trained to deal with things this way. I think many
Yep.
of us have been conditioned to create steadiness,
Yep.
stability, and
Yep.
that doesn't really value change and movement.
Yeah.
Other than, some kind of picture of success of climbing some sort of ladder that
Hmm.
clearly the day you climbed that ladder, that didn't take you to a good place, right?
Right. Right.
So figuratively speaking, of course,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of ways to look at how you move forward. And I can say easily, and I'm sure you can too, that nobody lives their life in a straight line.
No.
It's very squiggly and circular and up and down and sideways. So,
Right. Right.
but I think it's what you're pointing to here is, how do you navigate that in a way that is allows you to grow, develop, to see your own potential, to know yourself.
Yep. Yep.
And it sounds like you took a very difficult situation and saw that as, it stopped you in your tracks, no doubt,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you used it. You used it productively to make some big decisions, it sounds like.
Yeah, in that category right there, that when change happens and you go through that disruption, inevitably there are going to be decisions and choices that we make as we move forward, because that's
Yeah.
just what life demands.
Yeah.
And in the same way, when I fell, it's the bills still keep coming, and there's work that needs to be done, and kids that need to be raised, and a house that needs to be cleaned, and on and on and on.
Right.
Their life continues, and there is no better time, and it's a bit counterintuitive, but there is no better time in life to really pay attention and be curious about where the story is going, because all of those things that have held structures of predictability and routine have been upended. Whether it's a
Yeah.
job change or a health crisis or whatever it might be, a relationship that ends, a stage of life,
Right.
those routines aren't there to prevent some of the creativity and the curiosity that typically they do.
Yeah.
And we are creatures of comfort. We do want things that hold comfort and safety, routine. Those are all good things.
Yeah.
But as soon as they begin to move us towards a place of where curiosity becomes more of a, I'm going to put this on the shelf, when we stop learning,
Right.
when growth becomes a little slower and stunted, that's the gift of transition. Like transition invites those things that tend to go become a little quieter to come back to life. If we learn the discipline of transition, if we learn how to stay and ask the questions, especially the ones that are about now what, if we stay in and learn to wait and listen, something will emerge that holds some clues, some compass headings, some next steps to help answer now what. But we have to teach. We have to learn that discipline. It's no different than learning how to eat well and take care of your body, or maybe a spiritual discipline of some kind.
Right.
You don't just wake up one day and know how to meditate. You don't just wake up one day and recognize how to, do some spiritual fast or really good, meditation. It's something you have to learn.
Yeah.
And transition is perhaps, I believe it's one of the most sacred disciplines. And it's primarily, I believe that is because we make these huge choices during these times, and they can set us towards a path that's about our lives coming more alive, more full, more rich, more who we're supposed to be in the world, or we move to another story.
Right. Right.
And that's why it's so crucial that we pay attention and listen to the clues.
Yeah, definitely. So at that time, as you were laid up and relying on your crew to keep things going and talking with your friend, Ron. What were some of the clues that were coming to you, or what were some of the decisions you were making?
Yeah. So I had in the months prior to falling, I had started some of this conversation already about what I really want to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And, so questions related to what do I really desire for my life and my future were already on the forefront of certain conversations. Ron being with him in that conversation. And I did a few writing exercises at that time I think it was about a year or so before I fell, where I began to think about my future in terms of impact. Like what type of impact do I want to have on others? Influence do I want to have on those around me in my vocation? I wrote some stories from the future, which is an exercise I have a lot of my clients do, where you imagine your life 3 to 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And, if I'm talking to someone, what would they say about my life and my impact on them?
Right.
What kind of work were we doing? What kind of problems were we solving? And so I did that work, and I began to see that there were predictable patterns that were showing up in the desires from the future. And it was about coming alongside people in seasons of change and transition. It was about provoking with really good questions, because a really good question is probably one of the most sacred things you can offer to someone in a transition.
I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
It can be a game changer when it's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I was inviting in those stories a new way of listening and a new way of looking at their lives, and a future that was asking for them to keep taking steps towards. And there was always some type of restoration in the stories that I was writing.
Interesting.
So I couldn't see all of that. I needed someone else's eyes on the stories that I was writing to be able to say, wait, there's a nugget, there's a clue, pay attention to that. And so that was the work that I did prior to falling. And also with that, I did some experimenting.
What did that look like?
Well, so what we came to as an experiment was, well, what if you just started doing the work? What if you started meeting with someone in a coffee shop or a hotel lobby, and you meet with them once or twice a month, maybe at your lunch hour, maybe in the evening as you're allowed to with your schedule, and you do your thing, ask questions, reflect back what you hear going on in their life, essentially become their, guide of sorts in their transition. And that was really the scaffolding of the experiment.
Yeah.
And I started to do it. I just started to, I'd go work and paint in the morning, and I'd get my crew started, and then I'd do an outfit change in a bathroom somewhere, and go meet with them, and then return to the job site. So by the time I fell,
it's kind of like what Superman would do.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So by the time I fell, I had 7, 8 clients that I was working with doing that work.
Wow.
And so there was some evidence building there of a new story.
Yeah.
And I think that so much of the work of transition is that kind of persistence where you're wanting a new story, and you have to do the work of giving weight to those new pieces of evidence that are emerging, and continue to walk with them day by day by day.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a fast thoroughbred race. This is going to be more like a burro or a donkey moving through the desert.
Right.
And people need to shift their thinking, and there will be a new story. That much is sure if you keep leaning in.
Yeah.
And
it may not be the story that you think it will be, right?
No.
You start maybe with a picture of what you think you're headed for. And yet it's just as important. It's not just about the questions you may be asking the other person as you were, but also the questions you're asking yourself along the way, and, staying open to what's showing up. Right.
Right.
And the other part of this, I like what you're talking about in terms of the pacing, that it's not a fast thing. What I'm also hearing though, is there was a real kind of groundedness and commitment to seeing where this was going to go. There was a steadiness about it. It wasn't crazy and all over the place. You
Right.
had your painting business, you had your kind of your financial anchor,
Mm-hmm.
and you were chipping away at this over time. You gave
Yeah.
it time, you gave it patience. And my hunch is, and tell me if I'm right, that it felt right what you were doing as you were going along. There wasn't a lot of deep questioning, like, am I really doing the right thing? You might have been saying, can I really make this work
Mm-hmm.
financially?
Mm-hmm.
But which I would think would be a normal question to ask yourself. But
Yeah.
but yet, there you are, and you're up to 8 or 9 people,
Right.
right? And it's starting to turn in, it's taking form and shape. This isn't just a little something you're doing on the side as an experiment
Right.
anymore, right?
Right. Yeah, totally. A new form was taking shape, and it certainly had a lot of weight as I
Yeah.
reached that point of like, okay, like there's something here emerging. It's
Yeah.
undeniable.
Yeah.
And that's part of the learning that was occurring for me. And there's all those questions of like, well, yeah, but how do you turn this into a living, like a full-time career? And
Right.
is there a path for that to occur? Which is also at the time like a great question for me to be asking. The
Sure.
fall certainly expedited that process along a little bit.
Well, you had a little more time on your hands to think about it, I guess,
That's
right?
right. That's right. But I do believe that, it's the long game. It's the long
Yeah.
game.
So you said about a year before the fall, you
Hmm.
were working with Ron, you started some exercises with him and started, meeting with people. I am, not to get into too many details, but I am curious, like, how did you find people to meet with?
Yeah. So I just reached out to the network of people that I had at the time. I sent out a
Okay.
mass email,
Oh,
and
okay.
Ron did as well, just to reach out to people in his network and said, this is, I want to introduce you to someone I know, or I said, here's what I'm doing, and here's what I'm exploring right now. If you know anyone who's going through a significant change of some kind, maybe it's a job change or career discontent, or something's occurred in their life, maybe a loss of some kind or divorce.
Right.
And they're needing someone to talk to who,
Yeah.
has a bit of training and is working
Right.
to experiment himself.
Right.
This could be a great opportunity for you
Yeah.
to get great help and not
Yeah.
cost hardly anything.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
that's kind of how it began.
That's great. It's
One
good
or
to
two at
hear
a
how you
time.
did that, because I think it's helpful to hear, like, what
Yeah.
did you do? Like, find someone on the grocery store line, or, how did you find these people?
Well, I mean, that brings up a good point. One of my very first clients, I was at a workshop, a weekend workshop. I was there at a table, just kind of promoting some of the things I was doing. I didn't have hardly anybody I was working with at the time. This is post injury.
Uh-huh.
There was this wonderful woman, Donna, who now works on our board, the board of directors at Liminal Space, who was at this table, and she was just there helping. And I began chatting with her during a break and learned a little bit about her story. She was a nurse, a baby nurse, where she would be there during the delivery, right? Got to hold the baby and hand it to the mom. All these like precious moments in her career,
Yeah.
which she loved.
Yeah.
And then one day had surgery and on her hand, and
Oh.
the surgery didn't go the way that they had hoped, and she was put on disability and not able to work anymore.
Oh, wow.
So by the time I talked to her was 4 years after that had occurred. And so what I saw in her story, in her face, in some of her tears and some of the forced smile, was this desire to find a next, but not sure how to make that jump, how to make those steps, hungry. And so she was in this place of transition and very, very stuck. And so I felt this sense of like, I want to work with her. I want to walk wherever that takes us. I want to walk with her into it. And so I took a bold step of, after listening to her story, she described how she made dozens upon dozens of cookies, and she would deliver those to people that she knew who were going through difficulties, or bring them to church on Sunday mornings. And so I brought her a plate of cookies the next day. And I said, I come over here. I want to talk to you. And I handed her a plate of cookies, and I had a little card for her. And I talked to her. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was, there is something in your life that's intended to do more with your hands than bake cookies.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out what that is, because what you did as you were catching those babies and handing them to mom, what precious work. And
Right.
it's so wrong that that was taken from you.
Right.
Let's figure out together what it looks like for you to use those hands in ways that are more satisfying than baking cookies.
Right. Right.
And so sometimes you have to go after that client. You have to go after that future and not just wish for it. You have to go after it. And that was one of those clients where I'm like, I want to work with this person.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had those moments too. I know exactly what you're talking about. And, some people will meet you, right? Partway for that. And others are, maybe a little guarded, but clearly it sounds like she was ready
Open.
for you to approach her in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
That's really cool. So from that point, so the point where you still had the painting business and you had at least a small cadre of clients you were working with, how long ago was that? When did you transition into opening Liminal Space and really doing that full time?
That was 2010 when I fell. So 2009, I'd started the experiment of working with people in transition, and then full time started in 2010. So it happened in the fall. So it'd be the spring or January of 2011 is when I started it full time.
Wow!
So been at it ever since, full time, doing the work that I'm doing now in a variety of different forms.
Tell us about that. I want to hear about what it looks like today.
Yeah, so I'm working with primarily people doing one-on-one transition work. So I've got a base of clients that I work with that, depending on the nature of the transition, the level of disruption they're trying to move through and the questions they're asking, I might journey with someone 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
And then I also do a variety of different teaching and workshop experiences that are about transition work and what it means to build various transition skills. One of the things that we've created over the course of the 10 years is an assessment called the Liminal Strengths Assessment.
Oh,
and
neat.
it's a tool that basically is looking at the way a person moves through major seasons of change and transition. We all have an approach. We all have a way of handling change.
Right.
We put a spotlight on it and consider what about that is helpful and what about that avoids the work of transition. And so we look at resilience and planning and community, self-care, self-honesty, action, and faith, as the research keeps showing us again and again that those 7 dimensions are really relevant to helping a person move through a transition. So we use that as a significant tool for helping people figure out what's a good approach during change and transition. We teach on that. And one thing I'm super excited about now is we have a certificate program now that is called the Liminal Guide Certificate Program.
Oh, wow.
That's all about training people to become liminal space guides or liminal guides, transition guides, where they can then learn how to guide someone through a major life transition.
Wow.
So that's exciting. We've got a cohort that's gone through now. We're halfway through and we're looking for more people for the fall.
Oh,
so
excellent.
It's another exciting part of this particular season of the organization and where we're heading.
Wonderful. So tell us a little more about that. That's a training program. Do people have to take an exam or do they have to pass to be certified, or what are is it an in-person type of program, or can they do it remotely? Or
we have at least 3 times next year. I think we're going to try for 4 different sessions here in Seattle where we all gather, and then in between sessions we have Zoom sessions where we meet online as a cohort. And there are certification sessions throughout the year, 6 total. Each of those is designed to allow for the cohort, the individuals, to demonstrate skill, things that they've learned along the way about what it means to guide a person through transition. All of the certificates are paired up with each other. So there's peer coaching, and they are working with one another in their partner's transition and practicing on one another. And during certification sessions, they're demonstrating that skill in front of a teacher.
Great. Great.
So that's part of the process for the year as we move
So
through.
somebody who isn't based in Seattle could
definitely
do this certification. I think that's important to know.
We have people already from around the country that are in the certificate program. And
Wonderful.
so it's a wonderful experience. And it's really we've got a variety of people. We've got some pastors, therapists. We've got a financial advisor. We've got a Microsoft employee. I mean, we've got project managers.
Wow.
So it's a variety of people who are in positions of influence and know that if you can't help a person on the interpersonal side, if you can't be with them in whatever they're going through as a person in their career, and how that intersects their personal life, there's so many skills to be learned in that space.
That's fabulous.
So
that's wonderful. So really, the liminal space, I don't know if you call it a model or an approach. Really applies both to people's professional lives, but also personal lives. It really sounds like it's a very fluid kind of model in that way.
For sure. I mean, when you think about life, it's probably the one thing we all share in common, no matter where you're from or what level of income, or the fact that you're human is to go through change.
Yeah.
And it's the guarantee for sure. And yet I don't think transition is guaranteed.
Yeah.
I think that's the space that people use to understand what the change is all about. And you can go through an experience and not understand it. You can go through all kinds of change and not come to terms with what it means for your life now. And so that is the heart of the work of transition. That is what it means to move through it. It's to lean into that work. So whether it's professionally or personally, there is going to be that work.
Yeah.
From job to job, seasons of your career to the next, climbing the ladder. So often we talk about change and transition with really difficult things like major losses and really, really hard, painful things, setbacks. But going from employee to manager is also a huge disruption.
Oh my gosh. I think totally, especially there you are in Seattle, you have Microsoft has a major presence there. I think about, for example, people who've had all these, technical skills and they get promoted into a management role. They might as well have been given a completely different job, right? Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And because it's a promotion, the presumption is you know what you're doing, when that couldn't be further from the truth.
I see it all the time in my coaching practice. Definitely. Yeah. People with software backgrounds all of a sudden have management responsibilities and they have no skills in that area. And it's distressing because it's like, here's a reward for you. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing now.
Right. Yeah. And how important it is to ask for help when you reach a new elevation in your leadership.
Yeah.
Because it's an important change. And if you don't pay attention, if you don't get the help that you need, you're going to botch it up.
Right.
And 6, 8, 10 months, maybe more from now, you'll be asked to move on.
Right.
And what a horrible way for that story to go.
Right. Exactly.
Ron Carucci, the Ron I was talking about earlier, wrote a book called Rising to Power. And it's for that very thing, that very transition of moving from one position to a higher elevation of leadership and what it means to navigate that transition. So critical.
So that's your Ron, is Ron Carucci.
That's my Ron. That's
your Ron. I know who Ron Carucci is.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I was like, Ron around the corner. It's like, no, you're talking about Ron Carucci. Okay. He's
a dear friend.
Well, he sounds like he's more than a dear friend. He's a dear mentor and guide too.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Jon, this has been I love this conversation, and I love the way you frame things around seasons and stories, and the way we can think about our lives and how we can embrace transition and how we can, engage in all that life has to offer us and all that we can make happen. Right.
Yeah. That's what that's the heart of the work. Is there's so much opportunity in transition. It's just the work to slow down, pay attention, Look at the clues.
Yeah.
Learn how to hold them and move with them.
Slow down. Wait, you said slow down? What does that mean?
Slow down. Right. Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, so Jon, if someone would like to reach you or find you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can certainly go to our website. It's inaliminalspace.org.
Inaliminalspace.org. Okay.
Right. Or you can send me an email, Jon, Jon, at inaliminalspace.org.
Great.
Liminal is spelled Liminal.
Great.
And then it's space, like SPACE. So
right.
inaliminalspace.org.
Wonderful. And all of this will be in the show notes, along with all of Jon's or Liminal Space's social media handles and all the other resources we've talked about today. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time and your presence on the podcast.
Yeah.
And, keep making change.
Thank you so much for having me on, Tammy. I really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Jon DeWaal. It was so special to speak with him and learn about his professional and personal journey, along with the important insights as he has developed his career. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 023. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. Are you thinking about what's next for you? Are you ready to consider your options and begin a process of exploration to get the clarity, energy, and plans you need to move forward? I am piloting a small group for 4 to 6 professional women who are curious, willing, and ready to engage in a 3-month program that offers the information, inspiration, and support you need to get where you are going next. We will begin in June 2019, as summer provides an easy time for reflection and the opportunity to look towards the future. By September, you will be refreshed and ready to take on new endeavors. Interested? Questions? Contact me through my website or via email, and we will schedule a conversation to explore the possibilities. If you enjoyed this episode today with Jon, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygoularloeb.com/Apple. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows? Maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.